Hi everyone, it's Ren here. I hope you're doing well, guys, and that you're enjoying your Sunday. I am going to try to answer a question from a viewer in this video, and the question was the following. The viewer was asking, as an INFJ, or perhaps more generally, as a person who is highly self reflective, and highly intuitive, how to peacefully get out of a conversation that one would like to get out of, whether that might be because the other person, the other conversationalist is, talking a lot, maybe talking about themselves a lot, getting lost in this sea of words and explanations and narrations because they can sense also at an intuitive level that you are essentially a good listener and that you're an empathic listener, and so they might be prodded on to continue the conversation, and you're sort of in a situation where you just for whatever reason that might be, you want to do something else. You want to move on and attend to some other things, whether it be self-care, things that you want to do for yourself, or you happen to have to go somewhere else, but how to put an end to the conversation in a sense. It's a good question, and actually I have to say it's one of those topics that I actually don't think I've ever discussed in this practical manner. I've recorded so many videos over the years that it comes to a point sometimes where I'm like, what could I talk about which would be interesting? And it often happens that what I find interesting is, videos with concrete practical value. I mean, the theoretical stuff is also interesting to me, but it's maybe less interesting to some members of my audience. In any case, let's see what we can say about this topic. I think that, first of all, this is not as clear-cut a situation as it might appear to be. And the reason why it's not as clear-cut as it might appear to be is because the strategy that you should employ to get at a conversation in a particular context will be dependent on the person that you're talking to. And I think more specifically will be dependent on how well you know the person. It's reasonable to assume that there will be difficulties associated with both categories, because in the case of a stranger, in a sense, you do not really have to justify yourself to them because they don't know you. So that's, in theory, should make it easier. But the difficulty probably could be that because they don't know you, you don't know how they will react, essentially, because you also don't know them. Whereas in the case of a person who knows you, they will know typically how you react, what you're on about, and you will know what they're on about and how they react, and you know each other, and conversations tends to be a bit more fluid. Now the difficulty is different. The difficulty is that when you know someone and you've known someone for a long time, what typically happens is that the other person develops expectations in regard to how you behave. In other words, they develop expectations in regard to really who you are. What the typical person you are would do in a certain circumstance, and if you decide to deviate from that expectation, they might take it in a bad way, or they might be a bit upset by it because in a sense their network of expectations would be upset. And that's typically the case if you develop a reputation as someone who is incredibly patient, someone who is incredibly maybe quiet, someone who's a good listener, who doesn't out of the blue just announce that they don't have time for this, so that if you come up with that, it may be in the first place that the person will be a little bit surprised, and they might even resent you for it because you have defied their expectations. Now that's something that happens with parents as well. When you when you grow up, you become a teenager, then you become an adult, you develop your sense of identity. There's a point where your parents expect you to behave in certain ways and you don't agree with those ways anymore, and you have to kind of emancipate yourself from the expectations of your parents and lead your own life. It's never an easy experience. It's not for nothing that the expression killing the father exists, although it's tied to other things as well. But people do it eventually, so the potential is there in us, and there's never, I think, a situation that is as strong, as stark as that later on in life. But that can serve as a useful guide. So now I think that since we have essentially two categories of people, we kind of have to look at both categories. What I would say is the strategies that you can utilize with strangers are not the same as the strategies you can utilize with people you know well, for reasons that should be obvious by now, given what I've been talking about in the first 5-6 minutes. With people that I don't know well, people that I may not know well at all, like what I do personally is that I would not necessarily opt for bluntness, for like straight honesty, like and this might sound like that I'm deceitful in a way, but it's simply because in a way allowing yourself to be very honest and to say I don't have time for this, I need to go somewhere else, I'm sorry, like it's something that in theory you could do, and certainly some people do that, but I just think that it's when you don't know someone, it's such a drastic move to make that it could be upsetting to them, and it could also be upsetting to you, particularly if you are the INFJ persuasion, because it's just something that's so unnatural to you. Now, there's always an approach that consists in conveying a message, conveying a thought. In this case, I need to go somewhere else. I don't have time for this right now. I need to go now. Softly, and this I think is where you have to make use of your effie in the first place. So you're having a conversation, and little by little you can sort of guide the conversation towards a conclusion, or to guide the person towards saying something. And you can react by saying, oh yeah, that reminds me that I have to go somewhere in 5 minutes, or so it's kind of up to you to gently guide the conversation towards a point where it would be natural for you to say that you have to go. So like there is a strong FE dimension to this. It doesn't really have to do with the thinking function. It's more about steering the conversation, not necessarily toward the end of it straight away, but towards giving you the opportunity to organically make a reference to what you have to do. Okay? Now, that's for the action. Now, how to justify it to yourself? Well, how to justify it to yourself is always going to be a little tricky. You don't want to feel terribly ashamed of yourself for doing something. In other words, if you manage to get out of a conversation, but then you move on to your next set of tasks or whatever you want to do, and if you spend like hours just castigating yourself because you think you shouldn't have done that, then it's kind of self-defeating. So I think that in this case, never forget that you're more adept at FETI than at FITE, so that what will ultimately convince you that you've done the right thing is not necessarily consulting your like innermost values, but more to reason your way out through TI and FE in conjunction. Reason your way out of this situation, and to say objectively to yourself, to state the facts. You state the facts. You say, okay, I was in that situation, that person, I gave them a certain amount of time, but then I actually really did have to do something and I had to move on, and you reason your way out of it. And I think that if you manage to reason your way out of it, the reasoning, when it gets to the conclusion, will allow you to get to attain some sense of peace. That's how I do it, and it works for me. So that's hopefully it will work for you too. Now, in the category of people well, like there might be slightly different strategy to adopt. It's a little bit difficult for me to sort of extrapolate from my own experience, because I feel that my reputation among people who know me well might not be the typical reputation of an INFJ, because my reputation is kind of someone who does say things straight, that I think. And so people just expect me to say like I just don't have time right now. In fact, sometimes I tell people, can you go faster? Can you go faster? Like, get to the point. I can get a little bit impatient, and people kind of, it's not that they forgive me for it; they expect it, and we're back again to this notion of expectation. And what can upset people is not what is said, but how what is said can deviate from their expectations. If they expect you to be a certain way, they're likely to expect you to be that way in the future. So, given that they know how I am and that I say things straight, it's fine if I tell them straight. Now, what I would say if I know them is I would not really say or rarely say I don't have time, sorry, I have to go, or I would not just say that, but I would often say things like, I cannot speak longer right now, but I could meet you at sort of later stage this week or next week if you want to talk further. And they appreciate that, and I would meet them later if they still want to talk about it. Because ultimately, in the case of an INFJ and an intuitive dominant, I think that sometimes it can be stressful when someone sort of imposes themselves on you in an unpredictable sense, in an unpredictable way, and demands your attention for a certain amount of time. What can be stressful is that it conflicts with the fluidity and the formlessness of intuition, because dominant NI tends to not enjoy having a lot of structure imposed upon it, and having the structure of someone demanding your attention and your listening ear out of the blue for a long time can conflict with that. If you're able to sort of defer that to a later time that you can anticipate in advance, I think that could help you tremendously. And you can do that politely, and it would be great, but it's true that if you are coming from a background of being expected to be very agreeable, to be very kind of meek in a sense maybe, and that you're afraid of upsetting people, not just by what you're going to say, but by defying their expectations. I think that what this suggests is that you might have to work on yourself on top of that. And working on yourself could just mean working on, little by little, affirming your personality more. So it wouldn't be a case of once in a while just coming up with something very direct and very honest and telling people, no, I don't have time for this now, I'm sorry, I can't spend more time with you now listening. It's not so much a matter of doing that straight away, but it could be a matter of little by little, piecemeal, step by step, week after week, month after month, and in many cases year after year, to progressively shift towards a stance like that. And that would make it sturdier as well, so that you wouldn't surprise anyone really. You just progressively just assert yourself more, and it will be easier for you to do as well, and you sort of have to take it as it comes and as it feels natural to you, to progressively move towards manifesting your needs more, and being more honest about that. And over time, people's expectations will evolve, and you will find that the more you do it, and that's an important insight that I would like you to remember, is that the more you do this, the less it will be painful for you to do it, because the more of the people who know you will have become used to you doing this. They will know that it's kind of the new you in a way, or you've decided that you want more self-care, that you want to spend more time on yourself, and that you're more open about this, and so people will no longer be surprised. So if this is easier for you, you can take it piecemeal, and the process will become natural after a while, and will no longer be a cause of psychic pain. As for how you justify it to yourself in this case, I think that in this case the justification is not as much of an issue, because the people, again, are people who know you, they know your qualities, they're not going to question your qualities, and you know that these people know you. So if in this case there are people who do take it badly, people who continue taking it badly, even if they're presented with the evidence of the fact that you just need to take care of yourself more, focus on your needs more, and that if even over time they don't change their opinions, that's really the question of how to let go of a friendship that was never really a friendship because it was too one-sided. And if you're interested, I can discuss that too, because I have plenty of experience with friendships that were not really friendships because they were too one-sided. I have experience with how to end those friendships, how to take my distance from those people without suffering too much from missing them or too much from blaming myself for ending the friendship. So if this is a topic that would interest you as well, I would by all means be willing to discuss that in the future. But remember, there is always a potential link here. People who make you feel bad for expressing your needs, even when you have been giving them a lot of your time, might either be people who just need to become used to this new image you're projecting of yourself, as an image that's more authentic to your needs, or people that don't deserve to be your friend. Okay? And on these words, I will wish you a good Sunday. Enjoy the rest of the day. And I'll talk to you soon. And don't forget, any suggestion for a video, pop a comment and let me know, because I'm always looking for ideas. Okay? See you soon, guys. Take care.